Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Every now and then we hear about a legal case that's just dragging through the court system. Trial court rules on it, goes up on appeal. Appeals court sends it back down. Trial court rules again. Appeals court sends it back down. And these tortured histories sometimes happen on cases where you look at it and go, this shouldn't be this complicated. This shouldn't be this complicated. But quite often it's one side that's funded really, really well, or it's the government, which is also funded really, really well. So several people sent me the story out of Reason.com, but it's a case being handled by attorneys from the Institute for Justice. As you know, they're always involved in cases that are extremely important. And this is one. And it has to do with the Michigan court, by the way. So I apologize ahead of time because I'm, of course, from Michigan. And I have talked about this case before, a long time ago, but it's had the tortured history that keeps just going and going. Michigan court allows town to use drones to snoop without warrants. Michigan courts say that a town can use a drone, overfly your property to see what's in your property without getting a warrant. And so one couple is suing. This is from Reason.com. Like I said, Scott Shackford wrote the story. The Institute for Justice argues that evidence from warrantless searches can't be used for zoning enforcement. But as of right now, the Michigan courts have said, there's an exception for that, which is just kind of strange. But the question is, can the government use drones to snoop on your property for zoning violations without having to get a warrant first? Right now, it appears that they can in Michigan. But a couple from Long Lake Township are fighting back with the help of lawyers from the Institute for Justice. Now, this couple has been fighting zoning enforcement in Long Lake Township for more than a decade over the couple storing vehicles on their property. The township accused them of storing junk and brought a code enforcement suit against them in 2007. And that is the distinction that's going to make all the difference in the world. It was a code enforcement lawsuit, not a criminal action. Therefore, it's considered to be civil in nature, not criminal. The couple fought back, and the township eventually agreed to drop the case as part of a settlement as long as they left things as they were. So the township said, look, if you don't add any vehicles, just leave it like it is, we'll be fine, we'll leave it at that. According to court documents, however, from the Court of Appeals, neighbors complained that the couple had expanded the number of vehicles they were storing on their property, and so the township investigated again. They were unable to determine if there were any zoning violations because it turns out that the couple's got, I believe, a privacy fence that you cannot see through. And so the township ordinance people went out and looked around and said, well, we can't see anything. The question is, what's going on behind that privacy fence? So they hired a drone company several times between 2010 and 2018. It's a long-going operation to surveil their property, flying overhead and taking photographs. Eventually, Long Lake Township determined that the couple had expanded the number of stored vehicles in their property and filed a civil action against them in an attempt to force them into compliance. But the township never got a warrant for the surveillance. And I've talked about this before with respect to that the Constitution suggests that you ought to get a warrant, okay? And sometimes there are situations where they can't get a warrant because it's so time sensitive. Something's happening right now. Well, the argument is that they have this long-standing problem with junk on their property. Neighbors have complained they could go to a judge and say, we've got this situation. They agreed to abide by certain terms. We're pretty certain they're not abiding by certain terms because we get complaints from neighbors. Can we get a warrant? And then a judge could decide either yay or nay giving them a warrant. But the point is, why would it hurt the township to go get the warrant? Why? And so that's what's crazy about this is it just seems to me that they could have resolved this entire issue by just getting the warrant. So township never got a warrant. And at first, the Court of Appeals in Michigan agreed with the couple that the township had violated the couple's rights and suppressed the evidence. But then the Michigan Supreme Court, in its infinite wisdom, vacated the decision and kicked it back down to the Court of Appeals to determine whether the exclusionary rule, which is the one that keeps the evidence out that's found with a warrantless search, actually applied in this case. And by the way, the Michigan Supreme Court is the same group of geniuses that upheld the concept that if you bring your car into a shop, that the tires rotated, if they take the tires off and rotate them and forget to tighten the lug nuts, it's still a proper tire rotation because they started the job. So that's when the couple's argument ran aground, at least for now, because the appeals court ruled in September that because this was a civil lawsuit, the exclusionary rule does not necessarily apply. The U.S. Supreme Court has repeatedly rejected the use of the exclusionary rule in civil cases. So the United States Supreme Court has explained that the purpose of the exclusionary rule is twofold: to deter police misconduct and provide a remedy where no other remedy is available. But I think most people would say, wait a second, police? Are the police mentioned in the Fourth Amendment? We'll get there. When analyzed under the federal or the Michigan Constitution, suppression of the drone evidence does not serve these goals. And so the evidence can be used in a civil proceeding. Note that this ruling doesn't indicate that the couple's Fourth Amendment rights weren't violated. Indeed, the court says it's operating on the assumption that the violation did occur. But remarkably, the court believes that a violation of a constitutional right is not nearly as important as enforcing zoning rules. And so the illegally acquired evidence may be used. So the police couldn't use it in a criminal operation, but the township can use it in a zoning operation. Enforcement of the township's zoning ordinance in this situation may depend on the use of drone evidence. And even assuming some marginal deterrent value impacting township officials, the benefit of suppression of the evidence is vastly outweighed by the public's interest in enforcing zoning regulations. So keep in mind, these are zoning violations that people imagined because they could not see them. They couldn't see them. That's why they needed a drone. Institute for Justice is now appealing that ruling to the Michigan Supreme Court to determine whether the Fourth Amendment's protections and the exclusionary rule require the suppression of this evidence. Its appeal to the state Supreme Court notes, the Court of Appeals majority opinion would let government officials conduct warrantless drone surveillance with impunity, even though that surveillance violates the Fourth Amendment. Worse, its decision creates a bright line rule. The exclusionary rule simply does not apply when the offending officers violate your Fourth Amendment rights in the course of looking for civil rather than criminal violations. That line in the sand is supported by case law and in effect would leave little incentive for a vast array of government officials from committing even blatant constitutional violations. One other thing you have to remember is that if the police see something while they're doing something lawful, they can often act upon it on the plain view doctrine. Well, I saw it, so I can act on it. I didn't need a warrant to use what I can see with my own eyes, okay? So what they can do now is ask zoning people, go out and overfly these properties, looking for zoning violations. And if you find anything criminal, let us know. Show it to us and we'll go, well, the drone footage was shot legally because it was shot by zoning officials, not the police. But if something pops up on a video shot by a drone at the behest of the zoning people and we see it, well, obviously we didn't need a warrant to see footage that they're showing down the hall there at City Hall. So there's all kinds of things that can follow from this, which the court should look at, and that's another one of them. If the government wants to conduct intrusive surveillance like this, the Fourth Amendment requires that it get a warrant, says Mike Greenberg, attorney from the Institute for Justice. The zoning authorities' failure to even try to get one shows their indifference to Michiganders' constitutional rights. I disagree with the use of Michigander, but that's okay. So here's the thing. The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, in full, reads, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Period. No mention of police. No mention of police. Does not say this does not apply in civil actions. It only applies in criminal actions. The right of the people to be secure. And everyone, I believe, if asked, would overwhelmingly say that that is aimed at government overreach, not just the police. Now, many people would say, oh, that's aimed at the police when asked, who do you think that addresses? But then if you ask the follow-up question, well, does that mean that other departments beyond the police can use drones but not use warrants? And most people say, well, no, obviously it's government. It's the government. The right of the people to be secure, the persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Doesn't say against unreasonable searches and seizures by the police. Doesn't say that. doesn't say that. So this is a crazy case, and it's a horrible, horrible precedent. But it came down from the Michigan Supreme Court, and I've learned to lower my expectations for them. They try. They try. They just don't do a very good job of it. So as of right now, the authorities in Michigan, who are not police, can search your property with a drone all day long. Don't need any of your permission, don't need a warrant, don't need no badges. No, they can just do that. And if they spot something during their overflights, well, then they can come after you for it. And like I said, if they discover something else during their overflights, what's to stop them from passing that along to law enforcement and saying, well, we were up there lawfully because we're just the zoning people. So it's a bad situation. So right now, they're asking the Michigan Supreme Court to readdress it. And then if that fails, I assume they're going to try to get it up to the U.S. Supreme Court. But we'll see about that. This is all one step at a time on a very, very long road. And again, my hat's off to the Institute for Justice. I mentioned last time, several people follow up with me on this, that you can donate to the Institute for Justice. They've got a website, ij.org. But you can also set your Amazon account, if you have an Amazon account, to every time you place an order, Amazon will kick a very small percentage of your purchase price over to the Institute for Justice. They'll do that for any charity. There's a whole bunch of charities that you can do that with. But there is a link that I will put in the description below this video that you can do that. And I can let you know, I set my account to do that. So I've already ordered stuff from Amazon, and they've gotten a couple pennies from me. But it all adds up. The amount of money that Amazon has sent off to different charities is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so the Institute for Justice is doing great work. I wholeheartedly support them and applaud them and would urge you to consider donating to them. And you can do it through Amazon painlessly. It's literally nothing out of your pocket otherwise. So you can simply order stuff from Amazon, and Amazon will slice off a portion and send it to the Institute. And easiest, most painless thing you can do right there to support a very, very good cause. So this was sent to me by Harwood, Mark, Douglas, Scott, Michael, and Kevin. From Reason.com, Scott Shackford wrote it. Michigan court allows town to use drones to snoop without warrants, but one couple and the Institute for Justice are suing. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Sunsets, like childhood, are viewed with wonder, not just because they are beautiful, but because they are fleeting.